Yo, what's up, guys? Well done to the Florida Panthers. Going into Toronto tonight, guys, and beating the Maple Leafs 6-2, guys. And now as well, guys, with Seattle beating the Calgary Flames tonight, the Toronto Maple Leafs are now bottom 5 in the NHL, guys. A perfect situation has transpired tonight for the Maple Leafs, guys. Florida going into Toronto tonight with their AHL team absolutely dismantling the Maple Leafs, getting the win tonight. And with Seattle winning, guys, it's absolutely a perfect situation tonight for the Maple Leafs. Now in the bottom 5, losing the amount of games the Leafs have lost now since the post-Olympic break. The Leafs have obviously been in this position for quite some time now, guys. We obviously knew that coming into this game tonight against the Panthers, tied on points. Florida's got a top 10 protected pick. A lot of us Leaf fans were a little bit worried that Florida might come in here, and play like crap, let the Leafs win this game, get ahead of them in the standings, really just to, screw the nail in deeper to the Maple Leafs, Florida after doing what they've done the last couple years in the playoffs. So the Leafs, of course, and then tonight would have been an absolute disaster. The Leafs found a way to come back and win this game tonight. It was a little bit scary, when the Leafs cut it down to 3-2, when William Nylander decided to wake up and score 2 bloody goals. But luckily enough, Florida kicked it into high gear in the third period, scored 3 unanswered, and luckily enough, the Maple Leafs found a way to lose this hog game, guys. And the start wasn't great as well. You got an early goal by the Panthers, guys. Ristolainen scores a goal 23 seconds into the game. A really bad goal that squeaks under Joel Wall's arm there. He's obviously going to want that one back, but it was a perfect start for the game. Was Ristolainen getting that goal there. And then 5 minutes later, we saw Reinhart get a goal. Not Sam Reinhart, the other Reinhart there. He gets a goal 5 minutes later on into the game to make it 2-0 for the Panthers. Obviously, there was a little bit of collision there with Joseph Woll, but luckily enough, that goal stood up, of course. And then we obviously saw Villeneuve getting the first start, for the Maple Leafs. There's obviously been a lot of fans that have been wanting this kid to play with the Leafs, and finally he was getting his NHL debut. Of course, Hames was still in the lineup. Quinlan, of course, was still in the lineup. Good to see Villeneuve get into the lineup tonight finally, of course, but obviously it wasn't a great game for him to get in. But, just to get the experience, get that first game under his belt finally, I'm sure the kid was happy. And the problem is he looks a little bit like too much like Mitch Marner, for God's sake. So every time I look at this blood kid now, I'm going to think about Mitch every time, for God's sake. So other than that, hopefully the kid grows some stubble so I don't have to look at him every time I think about Marner, for God's sake. But, I don't blame the kid tonight. It wasn't his fault. The team's just not doing anything around. They're not trying, obviously. But the kid did some decent things tonight. Obviously, nothing amazing. Of course, playing on the third pairing, for God's sakes, did shift a little bit here and there during the game, but not the type of game to judge a player on, of course. In a game like this where both teams weren't even really trying. Florida didn't have anybody in the bloody lineup tonight. We obviously know Barkov is out for the year. No Kachuk, no Sam Reinhart, no Bennett, no Marchand. There was a lot of guys missing. No Rodriguez, so no Seth Jones. So there's so many guys that were not playing in this lineup tonight. But it doesn't matter, man. With the Panthers, when they come into Scotiabank Arena, they know how to put on a show, and that's what they were doing. 2-0 after the first. The Panthers make it 3-0 with a really nice shot by Thomas Nosek. Really nice snipe over Joel Wall to make it 3-0 for the Panthers. And I'm like, okay, this is great. Up 3-0. Leafs look lifeless. They look dead. They're not doing very much right now. And then, Leafs get a power play because Florida takes a stupid penalty in the offensive end. Easton Cowan, took a really nice shot. He's been playing some good hockey the last 6 games, having 6 points in his last 6 games, getting an assist on William Nylander's goal where he came out in front. Took the shot on Tarasov there. A really nice goal by Willie. Got the deficit down to 3-1. And then after we saw Florida with another uncharacteristic play there, trying to dump the puck out there, turning the puck over at the blue line. William Nylander takes another nice shot and beats Tarasov to make it 3-2. And I started sweating a little bit. I ain't going to lie to you guys. I started sweating a little bit, saying to myself, oh, God, please do not come back and win this bloody hockey game. We saw what happened, against Anaheim when Matthews went down. Leafs came back. We've seen the Leafs come back against Anaheim as well in Anaheim. So I was a little bit concerned that the Leafs are going to come back in this game, especially against Florida, a team that's absolutely haunted the Maple Leafs in the past, of course. So luckily enough, the Leafs were able to score those 2 goals, make it a little bit interesting, but then Florida came out, stuck to their game plan, scoring 3 unanswered goals. Really nice goal by Samasevich. Really nice play by him to get that puck in between Benoit's legs. Greer makes a nice pass back to him, and he makes that nice shot there to beat Joel far right post there to make it 4-2. And then we saw Florida get a couple empty netter goals. Leafs did have a couple odd-man rushes there. Domi had a great chance. Nyes had a great chance. Tavares had a great chance. So Leafs had some opportunities. Tarasov made a couple great saves. The Leafs missed the net on a couple of shots, but we can obviously agree, guys, that the Leafs, the main priority was for them to lose 2 points tonight. that is exactly what they did. Both teams didn't even have a lot of shots on net tonight, guys. So Florida had 8 shots on net in the first, Leafs had 6. Florida had 7 in the second, Leafs had 6. Florida had 10 in the third, and the Leafs had 5. So 25-17 shots, guys. So that's not a lot of shots between both teams, guys. So you just knew that this was going to be a low-event hockey game. Both teams are obviously out of the playoff picture, and that's just another thing that bothers me. The 1 year the Panthers are not in the playoffs, neither are the Maple Leafs. It just really rubs me the wrong bloody way, guys. You know, the power plays look decent as of late, though. You know, going 1 for 1 time the power play. The power play has looked solid the last couple weeks, but unfortunately, we would have liked the power play to look good at the beginning of the year, or during the playoffs last year, the year before that, or the year before that, or the year before that. It's the same old shit. Doing good things when it doesn't matter anymore. It's typical of the Maple Leafs, guys. You know, it's just, you know, we got 2 more games left. The last Saturday night game of the season, last game for Hockey Night in Canada of the year. We are almost there, guys, with 2 games left on the schedule against Dallas and Ottawa. Ottawa clinched tonight, so I don't think Ottawa's going to be really playing anybody against the Leafs unless they're still playing for placement with Boston. Of course, they're both tied for the wild card there with 96 points apiece. So maybe they do end up playing everybody against the Leafs on Wednesday night in the final game of the regular season, guys. But Willie was the only guy with two goals tonight. Obviously, Tavares had a point. Cowan had a point there, but he was a -4 tonight. Nyes was a -4 tonight. Stetcher was a -3. Domi was a -3. Riley was a -2. McCabe was a -2. Yarncrook, Hames, Ekman Larson, Lorentz, Robertson, Quillen, and Pizzetta were all minuses. The only ones that were minuses was Villeneuve, Michelli, Benoit, and that's it. Those were the only 3 guys that were not a minus. And good on Villeneuve, you know, not to have a minus in a game where the Leafs gave up 6 bloody goals. 4 of them, obviously, were good goals. 2 were empty netter goals. But good on the kid. You know, he's obviously maybe going to get a role next year, possibly. Who knows with the direction of this team? I don't know, guys. You know, it's obviously up in the air. Maybe he has a good preseason with the Leafs. Maybe he plays lights out. I don't really know. Of course, he's been in the minors for 4 years. He's a good young player, of course. You know, I'm pretty sure the most assists on the Marlies. So this guy here is a really good young player. Obviously, the Leafs have a lot of things to do this offseason. A lot of things going to happen this week in regards to interviews with GMs and everything else. There's some rumors that the Leafs are only looking to hire one person and maybe mold them into a general manager, into a president. I don't know, guys. With the Leafs right now, with the GM search, it's all up in the bloody air right now. You know, we'll see what happens when the season ends in a couple days' time, and we'll see where they go moving forward. But we just hope to God the Maple Leafs hire the right people. Maybe they hire Florida's assistant GM, Sonny Mehta. Listen, the guy's a part of a winning organization, apparently a really good analytical guy, really smart as well. So we'll have to wait and see if the Maple Leafs decide to give Sonny Mehta the job. But Florida, even though they had most of the lineup not playing tonight, they come into Toronto and just remind us why they are still currently, for now, the back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. Guys, Nosek with 2 goals. Samasevich had 3 points. Luosterainen had 3 points. Greer had 2 points. Reinhardt had a goal. So these guys here were just having a field day on the Maple Leafs. Even though the Maple Leafs pretty much dressed most of their guys, except for injuries, of course, Florida barely dressed anybody, and they still spanked the Maple Leafs. That just goes to show where the 2 organizations stand right now. Florida's just not in the playoffs simply due to injuries and the Olympics and everything else. We obviously knew that the Panthers were going to have a blimp this year, you know, making the Stanley Cup final 3 straight years, winning 2 cups. This year was pretty obvious that they were not going to be playing in the playoffs this year, guys. But next year, this team is going to have a top 5 pick, top 10 pick next year. Going to have Barkov back, a healthy Kachuk, a healthy Marchand, everybody, a healthy Barkov. Everybody else is going to be healthy. This team here is going to be primed and ready to compete again next year in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And, of course, the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to attempt to try to get back to the playoffs, guys. You know, but unfortunate way this season has gone, guys. Perfect result tonight for the Maple Leafs. You got 2 games left. Play whoever the hell you want the last 2 games. I could care less how the result goes, guys. This was a perfect game tonight for the Maple Leafs. You lost in regulation. Seattle won tonight. You're in bottom 5 now. Obviously, we still have to worry about the lottery balls falling where they may, but this was a good loss for the Leafs tonight, guys. I do not want to see the Maple Leafs losing game, guys. I do not even want to be cheering for goals for the Panthers, but this is the right thing right now for the hockey team, is getting a top 5 pick, hopefully drafting a defenseman, specifically Veerhoff or Reed would be nice. McKenna would be great as well, but I would love the Leafs to get themselves a #1 defenseman in this year's draft, that they can finish in the bottom 5 and get a top 5 pick, guys. But we'll love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions on this loss by the Leafs tonight. Perfect situation for the hockey team tonight, guys. So we'll love to your thoughts and opinions, guys. Thanks for watching, as always. Like this video. Subscribe if you guys want to see more content. Go Leafs, go as always, guys. See you guys on the next episode of Leafs Unfiltered. Ciao, guys.